Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of this newsletter is going to be relationship attachments that cause suffering. I've got one email that I'm going to go through with you today from a viewer, and this one's from a woman. And obviously what we're going to talk about is getting attached, because this is a big thing that I used to do especially when I was in my 20s, and a lot of people in general do. It's like when you deep down, you either feel or you fear that you don't deserve to have what you really want. And like I know when I was younger, how that manifested itself is that I was constantly getting hung up on women who I liked but who weren't available. They were either married, they had boyfriends in a relationship, or they just simply weren't interested. And by staying hung up thinking, hey, eventually I'm going to change their mind, or they'll see me what the great guy I am, then I'll get my shot. And in reality, all that's really going on is I was just trying to avoid being in a relationship because I was afraid of getting hurt. And subconsciously, this is one of the ways that we sabotage ourselves. We start dating somebody and it goes sideways, and it's obvious that that person's not really into us, or they weren't into us. Maybe we did something to turn them off, and yet we keep pursuing them. We keep chasing them. And no matter how poorly they treat us or how much they communicate that they really don't care, we continue pursuing, trying to get them to change their mind. It's like just about every guy that's trying to get his girl back, that's usually where they start out, is chasing after her, running after her, begging, pleading, trying to get her to change her mind, to come back, give them one more chance. Obviously it never works out, and then they end up showing up, start learning about my work, start applying the things that I teach, and then they start getting good results. It really boils down to the fact that when you're with somebody of the opposite sex and you like them, that you see yourself as an equal. You see yourself as somebody that's on the same level as they are, that you have just as much to bring to the table as far as somebody to date as they do. And therefore, because you respect yourself and you love yourself and you value yourself and you put yourself on a pedestal, you're going to make damn sure that this other person is going to make the effort, that their words and their actions are going to be congruent. Because anything other than that is bullshit, and you're simply not going to tolerate it. Why? Because you know, or at least you should know, that you can replace them and find somebody else who will value you. I see so much suffering in what I do, people that are staying involved in relationships where they should have just ended them a long time ago. I talked to a guy the other day, been with the same woman for 30 years. He's had several kids with her. And he'd been ill for many, many years of his marriage, so he really wasn't, he was bedridden a lot, he was in the hospital, so he really wasn't able to engage in sex with his wife very much. And then when he finally got himself better, he learned why he was ill and was having all these health problems. His libido returned, and his wife she just simply wasn't very interested in sex, and she always had an excuse why she couldn't have sex with him. And keep in mind, this is pretty much the only woman he'd really been with his whole life, and they'd been together almost 3 fucking decades. They got several kids, and come to find out, his wife is pretty much a nymphomaniac. She's a sex addict. She had been molested when she was a child, and so when she was a little girl, and so therefore she's rebelling against an authority figure. In other words, she's still, as an adult, kind of trying to rebel against the father by basically sleeping with every guy almost that she encounters. And what this guy realized, that she slept with his best friend, she slept with his brother-in-law, she slept with her brother-in-law. Just about every guy that knew her had pretty much hooked up with her. She even was sleeping with some of the people that were working for him in his business. And literally, it's been one of the things he also realized is several of his kids are not his own kids. And the clue was, obviously, when some of his kids got old enough, he realized, they don't really look like me. And it was interesting to talking to this guy. He had a really good attitude about it, because he's like, hey man, when you've been like near death, like deathly ill, where you literally are almost dying, it completely changes your perspective on things. And he just has a really good attitude about it. He's like, hey, well, at least I know, and I've still got the rest of my life ahead of me, and I can go make it what I want. I mean, literally, from the time he hooked up with his wife until he found out about this, she literally probably hooked up with thousands of guys at this point because she just couldn't help herself. And this was, can you imagine this going on for 3 fucking decades? And there were obviously things in their relationship that were not ideal, but he really didn't dig deeper. He was more of a pleaser, and he just kind of went along with things. I talked to another guy today, really great guy, very successful at picking up women, seducing women, and yet he's got kids with 2 different women, and each of these women live in different companies. He's a really cool guy. So he's got 2 different women that he's had kids with, and one of them he spends more time with because she lives closer to where he does, and he travels a lot. He's always moving around from country to country in Europe, and he's got 4 or 5 women that he's having sex with on the side as well. One of them he really likes, he's having a good time with. She also happens to be married, and so she's really not able to be a relationship candidate. And one of the things that I pointed out to him is that you get this woman who's the mother of your child, and she's a great mother, and you enjoy chatting with her, but as far as sexually and being attracted to her, he's just not feeling it. She doesn't take care of herself. She doesn't work out. You know, he's been dating her for quite a few years because obviously they have a couple kids together. But the bottom line is she doesn't have the same value and the same goal when it comes to taking care of her body and being in shape. She just kind of let herself go and gained weight. And so he's meeting all of his needs. He just happens to be meeting his needs with about 5 different women right now. And the thing that I pointed out with him is it's not really serving you, and it's not really serving her for you to stay in a relationship when you already know that she's not everything you're looking for. And since she's not everything you're looking for, you're going to get those needs met. And so he's hanging out and hooking up with all kinds of other women, having one-night stands. He's got several other women he's been hooking up with for a lot of years. It's like each woman that is in his life is not ideally what he's looking for. And so whatever he feels like he's missing, he's got, like I said, 4 or 5 girls, and each one of them fulfills his some set of his needs, and therefore that's how he gets all of his needs fulfilled. Because he's like, I really should be settling down and getting married and have one woman. I said, well, if you want to attract somebody like that into your life, you got to create a space for them. Because right now what you got is you got some women that are great fuck buddies, they know they're fuck buddies, and it's totally out in the open. And you got a few other women that are basically holding on and hoping that someday you're going to want to settle down with them and be in a relationship. And obviously he already knows that that's not going to happen. And so in order for him to get what he really wants or he'd like to have, he's got some relationships in his life that really need to end. And a lot of people do that. A lot of people hold on to relationships way long past the time where they really, because most relationships just, they kind of run their course after a few years and it's time to move on. And that's the reality. But as human beings and in society, which just pounded into our head and it's just constantly broadcast on all media networks 24/7, you got to be with this one perfect person. You got to hold on to them for dear life for your whole entire life. And yet you're dating somebody and you realize that you just don't feel the same thing that you once used to feel, or used to really enjoy hanging out with each other, but maybe now that whatever the period that the two of you were going through when you met that was kind of similar, that kind of period of your life has kind of worked through in essence. And instead of ending that relationship, they stayed in it. That's what caused me to go ahead and marry my first wife, when really what should have happened is I just should have broken up with her and I should have moved on, because I was really terribly afraid that I wouldn't find anybody else. And it's like men and women both. We bullshit ourselves and we refuse to see things as they are. We're either seeing things as better than they are or worse than they are. If you've been following my videos for a while, that's pretty much the theme. The person that I'm reading the email of, they really can't see the reality of what's going on, because either A, they're projecting their fantasy onto it. In other words, they're seeing things as better than they are, or B, they're seeing things as worse than they are, i.e., I'm not worthy, I don't deserve to have the kind of person that I really want, and therefore I have to settle for what's not really meeting my needs. Kind of like the guy that's got the 5 or 6 women in his life, who all of them are great in their own way, and there are qualities about them that he loves, but he doesn't have like one woman in his life that fulfills all of his needs, even though that's kind of what he's really looking for. But he's got this messy, dysfunctional situation with all these relationships spread across several continents. It's kind of like, you know, a ship trying to get somewhere with the anchor still on the sea bottom. It's not going to work too well. So let's go ahead and get into this woman's email, but I got a quote that I wrote that I'm going to share with you before we get into it. And it says, people who get hung up on lovers who are unavailable, married, in a relationship, or who simply are not interested usually get attached to what they cannot have because it's how they subconsciously avoid relationships altogether. It also reinforces their model of the world that they are unworthy and don't deserve to have what they really want, thus becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. Success in dating and relationships comes as a byproduct of becoming your best self and by only getting involved with people who consistently demonstrate through their actions that they truly care about you. It's something simple. You look at what people do, not necessarily what they say. But if you're bullshitting yourself, if you're not looking at reality as it is, in other words, you're seeing things as better than they are or worse than they are, you don't, when you make decisions, you're not making decisions that are going to help you achieve your objective because you're blinded. In essence, it's almost like you're kind of drunk in a way. You're kind of drunk to what's really going on in your life, or you're intoxicated with what's going on in your life, and you have this fantasy, but you're not really living in reality. And that's a bad place to be because you're going to make a lot of mistakes and you're going to suffer unnecessarily. Because when you get hung up on somebody who doesn't reciprocate or who doesn't want the same thing, or they're just simply not interested or they're unavailable, and you don't accept that reality for it is, you're going to suffer. When human beings don't accept reality, when we don't accept that what is or what's happened, we're going to suffer. In other words, if you want somebody to love you but they don't, or they have a boyfriend, or they're unavailable, and you don't accept that that's the reality of things and move on to find somebody else, you're going to suffer. Because in essence, what's going on is you're not accepting the present moment. And if you don't accept the present moment, you're living in your head. You're living in the future or you're living in the past. You're not living in the present. And the present is the only moment that actually exists. And so the key in life is to get to a place where you can actually be in the moment. It's just like guys go out on dates and they talk the woman right out of liking them because they're all worried about what may or may not happen in the future. And since they're so focused on what may or may not happen in the future, they've totally taken themselves out of the present moment. And the woman could tell. They could tell he is somewhere else. He's totally wrapped up in his head somewhere, and it makes her feel uncomfortable. Things don't just flow naturally like they should. And so it creates a weird and an awkward vibe, and she starts to back away because she can't put her finger on it, but something's a little off with this guy. Something's a little weird about him. So let's go ahead and jump into her email. She says, "Hey Corey, I've been watching your videos on YouTube this afternoon after I just dumped the guy I've been talking to for 4 or 5 months. He is retarded. He had, obviously not literally retarded, but she thinks he's retarded because of the way he's behaving and showing up. She says he had the information that you give out for free about making a date. So obviously he must be a viewer or follows my work. She says this is a long-distance relationship and we've never gotten the opportunity to meet in person because he flakes out. Well, first mistake is that you're deluding yourself into believing that you actually had a relationship with somebody that you didn't even physically get together with in person. What you really had was a virtual pen pal. That's what you had. And that's the reality of this situation. A lot of guys do the same thing. It's like you can see men and women tend to do the same kinds of things, all based upon their belief system and how they approach things and how they interpret reality. In other words, their filter of reality. Because somebody who values themselves, who puts themselves on a pedestal and says, hey, I'm a great catch, I really have something of value to offer a person is not going to delude themselves and say, yeah, I've been talking to this person for 4 or 5 months on the phone and through Skype and email, but we've never actually met in person. They would never think that, because at the end of the day, for anything to happen, you have to physically get together in person and see what they're like. And if you talk to somebody, maybe you met online, I don't know how you met, she didn't go into detail, but you meet, you start talking, you start chit-chatting, and then you either need to go see him or he needs to come see you. And actions are the only thing that matter. And so if somebody's constantly talking about coming to see you, it's just like the guys that are trying to get girls back. Yeah, I'm going to see, let me check my schedule. Would you like to go out with me? I don't know, maybe. I'll think about it. They never get anywhere with that. The bottom line is, if she wanted to see you, she will make time for you. And in this particular case, if this guy, maybe he's totally fucked up and he's afraid of relationships. Who knows? It doesn't really matter. The bottom line is, his actions are, he ain't showing up. He ain't making dates to get together physically in person. That's a real problem. This should have only maybe gone a couple of days, and then once you realize after talking a couple of times that he's not actually serious about getting together in person, you would have blown him off. You wouldn't have called him back. You would have just said, hey, obviously what you're looking for, what I'm looking for, we're in different states. You're not willing to come visit. You don't really seem to be enthusiastic about me coming to visit you. I'd really rather meet somebody in person, because if you value yourself, you're going to think, I don't really want a long-distance relationship. I don't want to travel across the country. I'm good enough where I could find somebody in the city where I live. That would be the attitude that you have. And if the other person really valued the connection that you have over the phone or the internet or whatever, they'd either make arrangements for you to come visit or they'd come visit you. It's that fucking simple. It sounds common sense, but when you're emotionally wrapped up in this situation, and oftentimes you have limiting beliefs that say you don't deserve to have what you want, these kinds of things become acceptable, and you put up with shit like this. She says he was giving strong signals of interest, and there were some really great moments where he realized I wasn't a pushover or a moron. We're psychologically compatible, similar in intelligence, similar backgrounds, similar interests, etc. Twice in 3 months, I've had an entire week free to fly to see him, to meet him, and to hang out, and he said he would pay. I told him exactly what the dates are and that I'm available, and nothing. She says, what the fuck, right? And I would say, exactly. It doesn't matter what he's saying. Bottom line is his actions and his words are not congruent, so therefore, he's full of shit. She says, I'm on break right now, in fact, and he knows this. Instead of saying, hey, I got you a plane ticket, he pulls a Houdini, and I'm just sitting here bored. I was so sure he was going to pull through this time. Nope. So I blocked his phone number, his email, his Facebook, Google+, because I am disgusted. He told me point blank that he was still interested in me, and he told me specifically that he wanted to move past this sexual thing because we know it's there and we really got to know each other. You haven't even met in person. It's like this whole relationship is a fantasy. It's a figment of your imagination. She says he sent me a song and then poof, gone. He already knows I don't take BS from people, and that once you lose my respect and trust, it's pretty much a lost cause. Great. Be congruent with that, because it's obvious you've lost respect for him and you're tired of the bullshit and you're tired of getting jerked around. And you would want somebody like this out of your life because he never follows through in anything. And after 5 months, it's like enough is enough. She says, I think he will be fine. He'll obviously be fine. If he was really that into you, he would have got in touch with you. He would have made a date. She says he has no problem getting girls, but after 5 months, I can see why he doesn't have the relationship he wants. Well, you think he's good at getting girls, but maybe he is. Maybe, it's like, who knows? We really don't know what's going on in his mind, but the bottom line is that if he was really into you, he'd be making plans. What can I do with the next guy to make sure that I nail it and can finally put the games behind me and start a life with someone who appreciates and respects the fact that I appreciate and respect him? Well, first and foremost is that you gotta learn to love and respect yourself and say, you know what, enough of this fucking madness. I'm not putting up with this bullshit anymore. I deserve better than this. I deserve somebody who actually follows through on what they say. Your problem was is that once you got involved with this guy and you had this fantasy of what you thought things could be between the two of you, you took yourself out of the game. You took yourself and closed yourself off from any other potential possibilities because you thought, hey, I got this guy. I want these games to be over. This is great. We're going to get together and things are going to be awesome. We got all this great chemistry on the phone. But yet at the end of the day, 5 months later, you still haven't actually met in person. That would qualify as a problem. That is definitely a no-no. So the simple answer to your question is actions speak louder than words. If he really means it, he would have followed through on that within the first week or two of meeting each other. But obviously, he never followed through. And what you should have done at the time is said, you know what? This guy's full of shit. Let me move on. You should have lots of options and lots of choices. Date lots of dudes. You should go out and have a great time. And only start to focus on one guy who shows through his actions that he really cares about you. And he's consistently showing up. You got to give the other person the space to actually do that. But you can't do it for him. It's like in a lot of ways you're kind of pushing the wet noodle. Or like the game of tennis where you hit the ball over the net, then he doesn't hit it back to you, and you're running around on the other side hitting it back to yourself. And so you're in essence playing a game of tennis with yourself, and he's just sitting down having a cocktail, doing nothing. So next time around, I mean, within days or a couple of weeks at the most, you should have moved on from this situation and never gotten involved with something like this. So if you'd like to get my help personally, the quickest way is to book a paid phone, Skype, or email coaching session with yours truly. You can choose any of those options by going to my website and click the Products tab, which will be at the top of your screen on any page of my website. And if you'd like to get a digital or a paperback version of my book, on my website underneath the email sign-up box is an image of my book. You can click that. It'll take you right to Amazon.com. And you can either download the digital version or you can order a paperback version no matter where you live in the world. And I will talk to you soon.